Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. It's O'Connor and Company, the best way to start your day wherever you are. Because, well, we talk about everything that you care about, and there's a lot. It's been quite a 24-hour period here, not just with the vice presidential debate last night, but also Iran's ballistic missile strike against our ally and friend Israel, and an impending response from that nation. We'll get to all of it and more coming up at 6:05. Ron Halber, with the Jewish Community Relations Council of Washington. At 6:35, Cal Thomas will certainly have some thoughts on last night's debate. 7:05, Abel Maldonado, former lieutenant governor of California and now a surrogate for the Trump campaign. 8:05, Steve Moore, economist extraordinaire. And then at 8:35, Brent Bozell, surely on one of the things everyone's talking about from last night's debate, CBS News and the media. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie, good morning.
Good morning.
Late nights last night, burning the midnight oil on the debate, and where to begin? It was over almost right from the beginning, but it wasn't even close. J.D. Vance absolutely dominated that debate stage. It was quite possibly the most polished, professional, intelligent, coherent, personable political debate performance I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
I'm not prone to hyperbole, but he was absolutely magnificent last night. I was proud to be a Republican after a debate, and that's not typical.
Yes, absolutely. The steady and calm and just in control demeanor of Vance, and I think it's important to say compared to Walz, who looked confused, he looked scared. He had constantly that look that he'd been electrocuted.
Yeah.
And why are you electrocuting me was sort of the look on his face constantly. So like the comparison was very stark.
Well, and listen to the topics that the CBS moderators used. They started with Iran, of course. Then Norah O'Donnell pivots from the Middle East to, well, let's talk about the hurricane now. But it wasn't a question about the hurricane. It was about climate change. Then they talked about the border and the economy, and then the individual qualifications for each candidate. Then abortion, gun control, affordable housing, protecting Obamacare, affordable child care, and then contesting the 2020 results in January 6th. Those were the topics that they chose. So they were playing on Tim Walz's field there. It was 3-on-1 again. And there's one moment in particular that everybody's going to be talking about. Everyone is talking about it. Everybody was talking about it because it was another moment where the moderators injected themselves into the conversation. Listen to this 1-minute exchange here. What happens is Margaret Brennan, the co-moderator, after the conversation about the border, she sort of throws this little tagline in about the Haitian immigrants who were in Springfield right now under temporary protective status. She did this as if she were like correcting the record, because the implication, as you'll hear it from what she does and her tone, is that J.D. Vance just lied about something.
Right.
And Margaret Brennan needs to clear the record and make sure that the audience knows. Now, the rules going in was that there would be no fact-checking per se, but she just couldn't stop herself from this.
Right.
So now listen to what happens when J.D. Vance says, whoa. You want to get into this business of actually clarifying and getting into the facts about their status? Let's do that. And now watch what happens.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have.
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Oh,
That-
my God.
Can you believe that?
She is the worst.
Beyond, listen, I have a rooting interest here. I wanted J.D. Vance to do well. I'm a Republican. I wear it on my sleeve. Everybody knows that. This goes beyond that.
It does.
Let me step aside for it. This is the, if not number one, number two issue most important to every voter right now. It is affecting all of us. Here we've got both candidates interested in having a back and forth exchange on it, a very civil and fact-based. You just learned more about this process that you've ever heard on any CBS News program.
Right.
They want to get back and forth, and they literally cut their mics. Says, no, we can't let the voters actually hear the two candidates debate this issue. We're going to cut your mics because we have to move on and talk about affordable child care.
That's right. That's right. After I correct you.
After I falsely correct
right, I'm
you.
sorry. You're absolutely right. After I lie to service the other side. Let's not forget.
Right.
She's setting this up to help Waltz.
So, okay, thank you. So you agree with me and my reaction to this? Because I thought there was something wrong with me, that my toxic masculinity was taking over. Because listen, imagine
Here we go.
Imagine you're sitting on the set at MSNBC with Nicole Wallace, Simone Simmons, I think her name is, Joy Reid, Rachel Maddow, right?
God.
All that
The
estrogen
awfuls.
flowing. Yeah, right? And you're seeing this. Apparently, you saw it very differently. Here's Nicole Wallace's take of that moment.
Like muting powers. And I actually think if you're a woman, that might be the worst moment J.D. Vance had, because he was going to mansplain right over that mute button. He was, and again, I don't pretend to know how everyone will react to this. I think that a lot of women in positions of authority that should command respect just by virtue of that dynamic will see themselves in some dude that disrespected them and talked over. I mean, there was a moment like that with then Vice Presidential in the Harris-Pence debate.
Okay, this is so sickening. First of all, when you're wrong and when you lie, and when someone speaks up to correct that, that's not mansplaining.
And
okay? And also,
disrespecting,
he was incredibly respectful. He actually said at the beginning, he said, "I think when you put things out there, it's important to explain." Right,
Yeah.
and so he's sitting there listening to her.
In my mind.
Go ahead. Well, if you wanted to play it, I mean, he's sitting there listening to her lie and get the facts wrong, and he wants to correct the facts. That's not mansplaining. Also, he's the one the American public want to listen to, not
Thank
her.
you.
Not
That's the whole point. Well, that's the thing. Her whole position is, listen, they're in a position of authority.
Yeah.
They demand respect, and they deserve respect. And the rest of us are like, okay,
Also,
they're the candidates for vice president.
Right.
And she was wrong. He was correcting the record, and all you care about is that it was disrespectful. I'm sorry. Let's respect the truth, Nicole.
It is so typical of Nicole and those people at MSNBC to sort of trot out this credentialed class bromides, right? These talking points about, well, these are the smart people. This is what was used. Don't forget, I hope the American public doesn't forget that kind of talk, that kind of line of reasoning was used during COVID to shut parents down, to shut concerned women, moms down. Moms are tired of that kind of language.
More on yesterday's debate, but that was a critical moment. It happened early on. Everyone's still talking about it, but it just wasn't even close. There is a moment also when Tim Walz is asked about his lies about Tiananmen Square that we covered for you yesterday with Alana Goodman, and his reply is, well, the Hindenburg. You'll also hear some other media reactions. I'll tell you, Nicole Wallace and the Little Fever Swamp and MSNBC are the only ones, I think, who think that J.D. Vance did poorly, although even they couldn't bring themselves to say he did poorly. We'll show you some other media reactions, too, that was just hands down a triumphant performance for J.D. Vance, the candidate for vice president. Does it matter or not? Well, we'll talk about it all morning long, certainly, and you'll hear more clips about it. First, though, 5:15 WMAL traffic.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
There is no doubt in my mind, however Governor Walz did in terms of sincerity, that Vance won this debate.
That's Geraldo Rivera, by the way. Meanwhile, over on MSNBC.
Governor Walz have a problem with the truth? No. They were talking at one point, Vance wanted to correct something about how Haitians got into this country. And he was right. And the moderators wouldn't let him correct it. It's very interesting.
That's Chris Cuomo, by the way. Now let's swing over to CNN. John King, Jake Tapper.
But at the beginning, the two issues driving the campaign right now are Harris has a big deficit on the economy, Harris has a big deficit on immigration, and Republicans were happy tonight and Democrats a little bit nervous that on those two issues, Vance carried it.
I mean, this is across the board right now. Again, until you turn over to MSNBC. A little bit more from CNN analysis, though.
J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
That's my favorite one, Jake Tapper. Think about this for a minute. Jake Tapper just said that J.D. Vance is more experienced at public speaking and doing this. J.D. Vance has been a senator for a year and a half. Before that, he's just been in the private sector. He was an author. He was in business.
He's a writer.
Tim Walz has been a governor for 2 terms. He's been a congressman for 3 terms, and he was a school teacher, which I think involves some public speaking. And Jake Tapper says, well, J.D. Vance is more experienced at this.
Tim Walz just fell off the turnip truck. Let's just give him a break.
Yes, he is a little slow, you know.
Exactly.
That boy's not right.
That is so interesting. You know, I hadn't really thought about the fact that J.D. Vance really hasn't been in office for very long.
I will tell you what J.D. Vance is experienced at. He has been giving multiple hostile interviews with the likes of Margaret Brennan and Norah O'Donnell and everyone on CNN and every other. He has been out every weekend doing 3 Sunday shows. He will talk to anyone. He will respond to anyone. Tim Walz has been wrapped in bubble wrap and literally has never done any one-on-one anything. He has not done a one-on-one interview at all.
You know, Larry, you know, I have another job, and that is I work at this think tank, Independent Women's Forum, right? Yes. And I remember having a conversation with my boss, Carrie Lucas, who is often on this show as well.
Yes.
And you know, she said one of the reasons that why we should write white papers or, you know, articles is that we're constantly practicing and talk about these things is we're constantly testing our own knowledge of an issue and growing in that issue and learning how the issue has changed. And we're updating memos and we're updating talking points and we're updating these things. And it's really so that we are good at talking about them as much as informing the public. And that practice, you just nailed that. That practice that J.D. Vance has gotten, that's why he's so good.
And why both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz aren't. By the way, it's not just engaging in these interviews, but I can't emphasize enough, engaging with hostile interviewers. Even if Tim Walz does give an interview, it's as we often say, it's a full body massage. They treat him so. Okay, so I promised you that was the reaction on CNN, on News Nation, on even some MSNBC analysts when the person asked, does Tim Walz have a problem with the truth? Now let's go over to MSNBC and see how the ladies are handling things.
It's the audacity. I agree with you that we're in year 9 and no one knows how to cover the audacity. The audacity is that someone should have said, stop it, stop. Are you effing kidding me? And they should have dropped that F-bomb, right? I mean, they should have just, this is a debate. This may be the only chance people have to see the difference.
I don't even know
that was Nicole Wallace. First of all, not really being able to get through a sentence. She's so shaken up by all of this. But she's upset that the moderators didn't just jump in and drop an F-bomb and say, are you effing kidding me? That's what she thinks the problem is. All right. How about Tim Walz and China? We talked about this yesterday, about the fact that he claimed he was in Hong Kong for Tiananmen Square.
Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17.
All right.
Worked on family farms. And then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher.
This goes on for about a minute and a half, and this is the answer. And again, the question is, can you explain why you lied about Tiananmen Square? But he was given so much grace. Can you explain the discrepancy? No, there's no discrepancy.
Yes, you lied.
Let's just check in on Tim Walz.
Baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at.
Yeah, he's still going. He hasn't really explained the discrepancy or the outright lie. This was the answer. All right, so now I got the one bit of credit I'm going to give Margaret Brennan is that she didn't let it just end there. Here's how. So he finishes his minute-and-a-half monologue about growing up in Nebraska and playing baseball.
Guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
Okay, so now, are you ready?
Here we go.
Now he's going to give you the answer. And understand, he had like all day to practice this because he knew the story was out there. Here's his answer about why he lied about being in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square. Here it is.
I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
All right. Well, I think that satisfies
I will tell you that the silence from
Yes.
the moderators there, that was a gift, okay? Because, I mean, they really let it sit. It was an uncomfortable few seconds, right? And I have to tell you, we talk a lot about Waltz kind of being weird. His face, that combination of sheer terror and what am I doing here and how did I get here and I want to go home was on full display. He had that look on his face.
Tim Walz made Admiral Stockdale look poised from that debate back in 92, I think it was. Well, and also, by the way, J.D. Vance is, so a lot of times on the split screen, Walsh would be doing this sweat act thing where he's like stammering and not being able to get, like you just heard. And J.D. Vance, almost every time he knew he was on a split screen and he just looked at the camera and raised an eyebrow.
Yes.
It was just, he just sort of like, you're watching this, right?
And not only that, just really quickly, not only that, J.D. Vance had this very cool, collected kind of looking at the camera, almost breaking that, the
breaking the fourth wall.
The fourth wall. But also, when J.D. Vance would talk, Waltz would be furiously writing notes.
No, right? I thought he was playing Sudoku. That's what. It's 5:24.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Plowing through this morning rundown and news cycle like Tim Walz heading to China for his 35th trip. We can't wait to get to everything on this full slate today at 5:37. Thanks for tuning in to O'Connor and Company. Coming up at 6:05, we're going to speak with Ron Halber of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. 6:35, Cal Thomas, syndicated columnist. 7:05, Abel Maldonado, former Lieutenant Governor of California and part of the Trump campaign. 8:05, Steve Moore, economist extraordinaire. And then at 8:35, Brett Moselle will have plenty to say about how the CBS News moderators handled themselves last night. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. I couldn't find my mic.
It's that big, long electronic thing in front of you
I'm
with the red light on it.
Okay. I'm only halfway through my coffee.
It was a late night.
It
That's understandable.
Be nice.
Where to begin? Cut 8 here, if we could. Just want to remind everybody, Joe Biden's foreign policy, or specifically to the Middle East as it relates to Iran for the last 3.5 years.
I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran? Don't come across the border. Don't escalate this war. That's right.
But he said it 3 times.
Yeah, I don't know. Cut 9, Kamala Harris actually was asked the same question as vice president, and I guess at the time a presumed possible presidential nominee, and well, here we are.
Don't.
As President Biden said, just don't.
Exactly. One word. Pretty straightforward.
Well, yesterday they did. They did. They launched the most coordinated ballistic missile attack in the Middle East between Middle East countries in history. as missiles were raining down on the state of Israel for causing quite a bit of damage. Right now, only 3 casualties, miraculously.
There was one death that actually was a innocent Palestinian in Israel who was killed. So that's who they managed to kill.
200 ballistic missiles at the Jewish state. By the way, the only reason they have those missiles is because Barack Obama. People need to. I think this gets lost in the shuffle about the Iran nuclear deal, because everybody assumed it was just about them advancing toward enriched uranium and getting a nuclear weapon, which a lot of it was. But they were petitioning for the ability to develop mid-range intercontinental ballistic missiles. Excuse me, not intercontinental. I apologize. Mid-range ballistic missiles for defensive purposes, they claim. We should be able to defend ourselves. That's why we need missiles that can strike our enemies. Really, who's your enemy? Oh, the great Satan Israel. You know, the country that wouldn't even acknowledge their existence. So in the middle of that negotiation, part of the whole negotiation where they lied, of course, and pretended like they were going to continue enriching uranium, which they did, Barack Obama said, absolutely, go ahead and develop those ballistic missiles. Every single missile that rained down on Israel yesterday from Iran on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. They always do this on a Jewish holiday, by the way, to add insult.
Yes.
Every single one of those missiles Iran had and was able to fire because Barack Obama thought he could make some sort of deal with Iran. All right? That sort of gets lost in the shuffle. Now, Israel has vowed a response, as well they should. We now just have to sort of hold our breath and wait to see what that response might be. I also want to take a quick moment here before we start reflecting on this. The fact that there were only 3 casualties, I think, as of the latest report that I'm seeing from the New York Post, is because of Ronald Reagan. The Iron Dome, once again, magnificently performed its duty to protect the people there. This is a direct result of Ronald Reagan's insistence on developing the Strategic Defense Initiative, the idea that brought Gorbachev and the Soviet Union to their knees in fear because it would be a defensive. By the way, a system that Ronald Reagan was more than willing to share with the Soviet Union to protect both countries from mutually assured destruction. He was mocked, he was ridiculed, he was derided, and he was right. Ronald Reagan was right about everything, and the people of Israel are safe tonight in their beds, or at least safer, because of Ronald Reagan, and that doesn't get discussed enough. But we are. I'm looking at this yesterday afternoon, and I'm seeing these videos of missiles raining down on Israel from Iran. Iran struck Israel with 200 missiles, and I literally said, I wonder who's in charge at the White House, Julie.
Right.
We have no idea. We literally, people can't definitively say who our president is at this time.
Well, and we have felt that with, the hurricane and what's gone on in North Carolina, that there just doesn't really seem to be.
Yeah, but this is a Middle East war between Israel and Iran. I mean,
I'm only saying, Larry, that we feel it domestically as well. I mean, plenty of people are very worried about. I mean, I've been worried about China and Taiwan. We've been worried about the international scene but then something happens domestically. And the only thing the White House does is send out a picture of Kamala Harris, with blank pieces of paper in front of her.
And that's because anything that happens domestically, all they care about is how does this affect the election in 5 weeks. But I assure you the people in Israel, well, I was going to say they don't care about who wins the election, but actually I'm pretty sure they do care about who wins this election. Yeah, I think they do, considering what they're going through right now. Cut 11, they wheeled Joe Biden out, put him in front of a camera at what looked like some kind of cabinet meeting. Who the hell knows what they were actually talking about? And this is the best he could do.
I've been spent the morning and part of the afternoon in the Situation Room and meeting with my whole national security team and consulting with the Israelis indirectly because in terms of their impact on us. And the national security team has been, as I said, in constant contact with Israeli officials and their counterparts, and it's going to continue to be brought to me throughout the day. We're still allowed to share updates, and when we get them, and we will do that.
I mean, nothing.
Nothing.
Wow.
Literally nothing. Again, and reading, by the way, no questions at all. Same thing, Kamala Harris, she was trotted out earlier, again, just reading directly off note cards. You tell me if you think that she knows what she's talking about.
I'm clear-eyed.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I didn't even look at the clock because I get wrapped up in this story. Hold on. You'll hear from Kamala Harris what she had to say. And this is, listen, this is the serious stuff of why we need a commander-in-chief. This is the serious stuff about this election. And it's a serious choice to make. You'll hear one of your choices, Kamala Harris, coming up in a moment, 5:44. All right, as promised, Kamala Harris then wanted to let the world know that she's got a firm and steady hand on the wheel here as we look to the Middle East and see what is completely disconcerting, a 200 ballistic missile barrage against our ally and friend Israel from the most hostile nation state over the last 50 years on the surface of the planet. Iran. Here's Kamala Harris making the American people and the rest of the world confident about her ability to lead this nation on a global scale.
I'm clear-eyed. Iran is a destabilizing, dangerous force in the Middle East, and today's attack on Israel only further demonstrates that fact. Earlier today, I was in the Situation Room with President Biden and our national security team as we monitored the attack in real time and ensured that the protection of U.S. personnel in the region is paramount. I fully support President Biden's order for the U.S. military to shoot down Iranian missiles targeting Israel, just as we did in April. We are still assessing the impact, but initial indications are that Israel, with our assistance, was able to defeat this attack. Our joint defenses have been effective, and this operation and successful cooperation saved many innocent lives. As I have said, I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself against Iran and Iran-backed terrorist militias. My commitment to the security of Israel is unwavering. And let us be clear, Iran is not only a threat to Israel, Iran is also a threat to American personnel in the region, American interests, and innocent civilians across the region who suffer at the hands of Iran-based and backed terrorist proxies. We will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend U.S. forces and interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. And we will continue to work with our allies and partners to disrupt Iran's aggressive behavior and hold them accountable.
Then she wandered off and didn't answer any questions.
Wow.
So, first of all, again, the tone is, she almost seems bored. It's like, I got to get through this.
You stole what I was going to say. My analysis, you just stole it. I couldn't get over that. That sort of, I'm reading this. It's like she's reading instructions, to her husband as he's, repairing the boiler.
It's this perfunctory part of the job that I have to do, but I'd rather be, doing a TikTok
marinating
video.
a pork loin.
There you go. Yeah. Also, and I know a lot of people are like, well, what do you want? You want a firm and steady hand. You just want cool and calm at times like this. You don't want it. Here's what I want. I want her to threaten Iran. I want her to say, don't, not for even a second does she warn Iran, don't do, what happened to don't? What happened to don't?
She said, I've authorized them to shoot down the ballistic missiles that are coming into Israel. Like, that's your big, scary move?
Yeah. No, there needs to be a warning. Stand down now. You fire on Israel, you're firing on us. You're putting Americans in harm's way that are in Israel. You're also putting American military in harm's way. By the way, Kamala, I thought she just said that this puts American military personnel at risk. I thought we didn't have any American military personnel in any sort of risky situation right now for the first time ever.
Right.
And by the way, the message to Israel here is, listen, turns out the casualties don't seem that bad, so you better not retaliate. It's again trying to have it both ways. It's absolutely completely uninspiring, and it doesn't in any way put anyone over in Iran with their finger on the button in any sort of position where they're going to hesitate again.
It absolutely betrays the truth of her feelings on this, and the truth is, much like her stepdaughter, which is they think that, Israel's getting its comeuppance, right? The chickens, what is the Obama preacher's line? The chickens
coming home to roost.
That ultimately, She might. That is why you got a perfunctory, sort of bored-sounding reading of a statement. She's been told she has to say this, but in reality, she just doesn't really care that Israel's under. I firmly believe this. She thinks that, look, they kind of deserve a little bit of this stuff. Right?
No, both sides. Very fine
Yep.
people on both sides
Yes.
here. She did mention, though, that our military was engaged, specifically the United States Navy. I just want to take a quick moment. They're operating in the Eastern Mediterranean right now. They've been deployed there. As we mentioned yesterday, even though when asked about it, Joe Biden said he wasn't going to deploy additional troops. And then yesterday, we did, in fact, through the Pentagon, deploy additional troops to the area, almost entirely the United States Navy. There were 3 ships involved in intercepting these missiles. From our destroyers. That would be the USS Arleigh Burke, the USS Cole, and the USS Bokele. Excuse me for if I mispronounced the admiral's name incorrectly. They all 3 engaged in shooting their guided missiles to intercept the Iranian missiles. They were successful. They protected the good people of Israel, and just know that members of the United States Navy are engaged. And yes, very much in harm's way as we speak, despite what Kamala Harris wants you to think. It's 5:53.